Hello and welcome to CodeSlicing. In this episode, we're going to be building the Chrome icon from the ground up in SwiftUI. We're going to be doing it in 10 minutes. Now, if you haven't seen my series on layout guides, then I really do recommend watching it before you watch this episode. Not only will it improve your life considerably, but I wouldn't want you to get lost because this one gets a bit hairy. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin. Right, as usual, we don't have any nasty surprises to start, so I think the best thing to do is to start that clock and let's get going. And the first thing we're going to do is define a geometry reader here. And the reason we're using a geometry reader is because we want all of our measurements to be relative to the size of the icon, okay? And that is going to contain a Z stack. It's all going to be layered on top of each other. And the first thing we're going to put in is a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 0.2 of the width, GO width scaled 0.2. And that rounded rectangle is going to have a color of white. Okay, now we need to define some other colors that are going to populate our icon, and we're going to do that at the top. Private let, we're going to go the yellow color is equal to RGB 255, 203, and 66. We're going to need 4 colors. Green, 14, 156, and 92. Red is 218, 72, 59, and lastly we've got blue, which is 70, 135, and 243. I measured these, you can thank me later. Then we need to define an array of the outer colors, which equals yellow, green, red. The next thing we're going to do is loop through our colors over the top of the rounded rectangle, like this. For each 0 to outer colors count, index, and then we're just going to say this is going to be a circle with a fill of outer colors index. So let's resume that and see what we've got. And obviously that's too big, and we need to rein it in by giving it a ratio on which to base the frame size, because remember, we're not using absolute sizes here. Private let outer radius ratio, which is a CG float, and that's equal to 0.73. So down here, we can now say that the frame is equal to GO width scaled outer radius ratio, like that. Then if we resume, we should see it falling into place. Right, the next thing we need to do is define the layout guides that are going to help us. One to reference this circle that we can see right here, and one to reference points on the inner circle. This will make more sense once I put it on screen, but I'm going to need a ratio for the inner radius at this point. So let's put that up here. Inner radius ratio, which is also a CG float, and that's equal to 0.46. Now we can define our layout guides. So our inner layout guide is equal to a layout guide config of polar type with only one ring, which is going to be the inner radius ratio, and 3 segments. The next one we're going to need is the outer layout guide, which is going to have 1 ring, and it's also going to have 3 segments. So let's resume and then put the layout guides on this thing to make it obvious what's going on. The inner layout guide, color, black, line width, 1, opacity, also 1. Now you can really see it. I'm going to put the other one on here as well. Put the outer one there, but this one I will color blue. And we also need to actually rotate that layout guide config by 62.7 degrees. So that's what we're going to do. 62.7 degrees. And then when I resume, you'll see the effect that that has. And now this is a great time to start defining our actual shape. So let's define it down here. Let's just give ourselves a little more room. So, private shape, slice. And before we do anything else, we can refer to that here instead of our circle. Then we'll go back to defining our shape after we resume. So, inner layout guide laid out in our rectangle. We'll do the same thing for the outer one. And now we've got our layout guides, we want to move to the center. We're going to draw a line to a point on the inner layout guide at coordinate 1, 0. We're going to draw another line, but this time to the outer one. And now we need an arc, which is going to be a relative arc with a center of the rectangle, a radius of half the height. The angle is the angle from the center point to the point we've just gone to, which is G outer 1, 0, and the delta is 120 degrees. And lastly, we draw a line back to the inner layout guide at 1, 1. And now we've got that in place, all we have to do is rotate that shape 3 times, once for each color. We just say rotate 120 times the index degrees, like that. So there we are. This next part is a bit tricky because we've got to do the shadow. So to do that, I'm going to put the bit that we've just done in a Z stack. Okay, let's cut that. Put it back. And then we're actually going to be rotating the Z stack. So let's deal with this shadow. How are we going to do that? First thing we need is another shape. And it's going to be quite similar to this one. So I'm going to duplicate that, call that the shadow. And we don't need that bit for now, but we are going to need those layout guides. So we're going to put the shadow on top, like that. And for now, we'll just fill it with black so we can see it. And let's resume. Now let's go down to our shape. Move to 1, 0. And then we're going to draw a line to the top path line G outer 1, 0. I'm just going to remove this one so we can see all of them. And at this point, this has to be a var because we're going to be reassigning it. We're going to say that G inner is equal to G inner rotated 48 degrees. And that was just playing around to see what works. So, and path line inner 1, 0. I'm going to blur this shadow by 0.005 of the width. I'm going to bring this back and I'm going to assign that slice shape to a constant. And then I'm going to use that as the mask. Slice shape, like that. I want to put the shape back. I'm going to set the color equal to nearly white. But I'm going to set the blend mode to multiply. And the final thing we need to do is to just put a couple of circles in. We're going to need another ratio for that. So let's define that at the top. Private let blue radius ratio, which is a CG float, equal to 0.37. We can use that now down here. Fill the first one with white. And we'll give this one a frame of the width scaled. And we need to times the outer radius ratio by the inner radius ratio. Now, if we resume, we should see our circle. And then we can put our blue one in. Need another one. We're going to fill that with blue. And this frame is going to be the width scale, the outer radius ratio times the blue radius ratio, like that. All we have to do is get rid of our layout guides and we are done. Now, instead of removing layout guides explicitly, we could actually just disable them down here. So I could set that to false, or I could delete that line entirely. It's really up to you. But to prove that this is size agnostic, let's put this in a VStack. Well, stick another one in, make it 200. In fact, let's put that in an H stack. All right, we'll duplicate that, make that 50. And look, they are all the same and we're good to go in any size you like. Well, there we are, we did it, and with plenty of time to spare. Now, like I said, if any of that confused you, then go and watch that series on layout guides and it should bring it all into focus. And even though we did use some advanced features of layout guides, I think you'll agree that the resulting code was very simple indeed. Certainly much simpler than you would have arrived at if you'd done it natively. In the next one of these, we're going to be looking at the settings icon. And if you thought this one was tricky, well, that takes it to a whole new level. So join me for that. It's going to be brilliant. If you like that, then give it a thumbs up. It really helps people find the channel and gives me a warm feeling inside. And if you don't want to miss the next one, consider subscribing and you will not. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me. See you next time.